Now, the other option that we have for installing Windows 10 is to do an upgrade. And in the case of an upgrade, we have some slight differences from a clean installation. Upgrades install Windows 10 over a previous version of the operating system, but it retains user settings, data, and applications. So it keeps everything that was there, and of course the benefit is you don't lose anything. It's retaining your data, it's retaining your settings automatically, it's retaining the installed application, so you don't have to go through and reinstall photo editors and music players and line of business applications. It also does not require any additional storage for that user data. That user data is going to stay exactly where it is as you are doing the upgrade. The setup itself is very simple. There's a minimal impact on productivity. In other words, it's going to happen very fast, and the user's data will all be there when they log into the new system. So it does have a lot of advantages. Some disadvantages: you can't start fresh, so you can't start with the standard configuration. When you're doing it this way, you keep the existing configuration, and while that's an advantage, that can sometimes be a problem, right? Because it's possible for you to have some issues with your current system, and those issues then are passed over to Windows 10. And so, that is potentially an issue. It is only supported on some operating systems, and you can't change versions, or we really should say it's limited in your change of versions. If you want the full-blown upgrade, if you want the ability to retain both data and applications, then you can't change versions. Okay? Because if you change versions, what's going to happen is it's going to warn you that that information is then going to be lost. Okay? So it's just, it depends on if you want the full-blown upgrade or not. You aren't able to do upgrades, say, from 32-bit to 64-bit or vice versa, but you are able to do upgrades from Pro to Enterprise or Home to Professional. So you're able to cross those boundaries, but when you do so, it's only going to migrate user data. It's no longer going to migrate the applications and settings. Let's talk about the process for upgrading. There is a step-by-step approach that we would take to this. The first would be to evaluate. Evaluate is really part of that preparation stages where we evaluate if Windows 10 is going to work on the system that you're about to install it on. And so this involves evaluating the software programs that you have running and maybe testing to see if those are going to work. Evaluating the hardware to make sure that you've got device drivers. So that evaluation stage is not necessarily unique to the upgrade process. And the level of, the amount of time, I should say, that you take on that evaluation process is really going to depend on the scenario. And I can tell you when I upgraded my home computers to Windows 10, I didn't really spend much time on the evaluation process. Windows 10 was released, the actual official version, not the technical preview that I'd been using for quite a while. And as soon as it was released, I knew I was ready to go, and I installed it. And had zero issues. And that's what is most likely going to happen for everybody. You're not going to have issues, but it's still part of the process to evaluate, especially in larger scenarios where you're going to be upgrading Windows 10 to Windows 10 on multiple machines. And then ideally, you'd want to do a backup. I mean, that's optional, but you want the ability to revert. I have had one failed installation upgrade to Windows 10, and it went ahead and reverted right back to Windows 7 anyway. So in that case, I didn't really need a backup, but it is best practice to do that. And then we would upgrade. Following the upgrade process, we would want to verify that's logging into the system, making sure our applications work, making sure the data is still there, our settings are consistent with what they are, and then making any changes if necessary. And then finally, update. We want to make sure that we go through the Windows update process and make sure we're getting the latest updates. Some things to think about, just real-world tips. This would be one that's very common. It's something you definitely need to do. Any anti-malware, whether it's anti-spyware, but specifically antivirus, you want to disable those programs. Don't need to uninstall them, but either turn them off, or some of them will have a disable switch. Some have a disable till the next restart, or a disable for a particular period of time. Turn them off because they are protecting the boot sector. They're protecting the boot files in that boot sector, and those are the files that need to be modified by the operating system as a part of the setup. Any running program should clearly be shut down. We should thoroughly assess any applications and their compatibility. Another good idea is to clean things up before you are doing the upgrade. And so go through a disk cleanup, evaluate, maybe even get a third-party utility. There are a lot of free ones out there that evaluate your current disk structure and show you how much data you have, where it's at, and what kind of data it is. Windows 10 has that built in now, but Windows 7, Windows 8 do not, and so that can be very invaluable. Just get it cleaned up, defragment the drive. Make sure all of those things are done prior to doing the upgrade. It'll help the upgrade go faster, and the resulting operating system will perform better now that you've kind of taken some time to clean things up. All right, so let's take a look now at doing an upgrade. We're here on a Windows 7 machine, as you can see, and I've got loaded in here the DVD for the Windows 10 setup. Not really a whole lot to the upgrade process, as we'll see. It is a fairly straightforward thing. In fact, some of you may not have even upgraded to Windows 10 in this way. Some of you have probably upgraded to Windows 10 because we've gotten the little Windows logo that showed up here that was offering a Windows 10 update. In either case, this is just I downloaded the DVD and I'm using the ISO to do the install. And the other is I'm going to stream it through that little advertisement. In any case, I want to get updates. That's updates to the setup so that you have the latest bits for the actual installation itself. So it'll go out and it'll check for updates and if it finds any, it will download them for you. All right, and so now we have the license terms, hit accept. And then it's just making sure it's checking on a few things, making sure you have enough space, checking the version. Okay, and so you're installing Enterprise N, and it's going to allow me to keep Windows settings, personal files, and apps. And so you can change what to keep. This is where I have Professional N, and I'm going to Enterprise N. N is, I don't remember if I said this before, but N is just a partner version that lacks the Windows Media Player and Media Center and some of those multimedia kind of things that you really wouldn't need in a business environment generally. So we're using that version. And so because I'm going from Pro to Enterprise, that same classification, it's allowing me to keep everything. Some changes like Home to Pro, Home over to or Pro to Enterprise, but a different classification, you might run into situations where one of these is grayed out. And the one that's usually grayed out is this: keep personal files, apps, and Windows settings. So that just means it's not allowing you to keep everything. That would just be one of those restrictions, okay? So we're ready. We would click install, and it's going to start into the installation. Tells me it's going to restart several times. It's going to take a while. We're not going to wait. We got asked even less on an upgrade than we would have been asked on a clean install. Clean install, we at least had to pick where to install. This, we're launching the upgrade. We're just clicking, next a couple of times and install, and it's going to handle everything else. So we'll come back to check on this, because you also are going to have the ability to, first of all, verify that it happened correctly, but then also revert if you want to. So we'll come back to this later, but now let's move on and we'll talk about another option, which is the ability to migrate to Windows 10. Migration is the third option that you have if you're looking to move your current operating system to Windows 10. And migration is very similar to both clean install and upgrade. It really is a merger between the two. It is a clean installation, so therefore it replaces the current operating system on the machine, but then it does migrate some information selectively from the old to the new system. And so we get the effect of an upgrade while still being able to do a clean install, and we're more selective with the upgrade. Now, there's a couple different kinds of migrations. You've got a side-by-side migration. Side-by-side migration is when a company gets new machines, or if I get a new system and I have both systems running side by side, the old and the new. And so I'm going to clean install, and then I'm going to selectively migrate things over. You have the in-place scenario. In-place migration is also called the refresh PC. This is the same computer. And so in this case, you'd have to copy off the user profile information, store it somewhere else, called the intermediate store, and then you would wipe the system, clean install, and then restore the backed up user data. Okay, so we have the refresh PC or the side-by-side types of migration, just dependent on essentially the scenario. You know, is this the same computer and you're just you want to get the system up to Windows 10, or are you purchasing new hardware? Advantages and disadvantages to migrations. Let's start with the advantages. It provides a fresh start, which results in cleaner installations. Yes, you're able to migrate some settings, but you're able to be selective in what you migrate. It might just be user data. It might not be the applications and things like that, or application settings. And so that can be advantageous. It avoids performance degradation from old files and settings. As much as you might clean up a system that is being upgraded, there's still baggage there, you know, and a system has been going for a year. There's a lot of old stuff that's just not needed anymore, unless we use programs to automatically clean that stuff up. It ends up, you know, slowing down the system. So with the migration, you're getting a fresher start. Also, you can install any edition. You don't have any of those limitations. And so that's very helpful. And some security problems are mitigated. That's really speaking to malware. You know, malware that might be present in the current operating system. If you upgrade, then it's going to be present in your new operating system. And so we can get around that by doing a migration. There are some disadvantages. It does require the use of migration tools. The upgrade, as we saw, was very simple. Not really much we had to do. Just pop in the disk and go. But with this, we will be dealing with migration tools. Something has to be used to copy the data. It does require the reinstallation of applications. You can transfer application settings, all the registry entries and the configuration files, but you cannot actually transfer the applications themselves. You know, and sometimes people think of that as odd. You can grab a program files directory and copy it over to a new system. Okay? So let's say you have iTunes on a source computer, and you copy the iTunes directory from program files directly from source to destination. What's going to happen if you try to double-click iTunes.exe on that new computer? What's going to happen, and I can't tell you the specific message, but it's going to be something to the effect of, you don't have this program installed on your computer. That's why it's not showing up in the start menu. You know, so the programs actually have to be installed so that the registry locations are created, the program file directories are created, so that when you copy the configuration files in, the system already knows about that application. So it does require the reinstallation of applications. It also requires storage space for the user state data. That, generally speaking, is going to be on a network server, although it doesn't have to be. We can use the local system in what's called the hard link migration store. But you do still have to take up some space, because I've got to keep that as I wipe the system, clean install, so that then I can migrate that data. And it does have a larger impact on user productivity, just because it takes a little bit longer and it's a little bit more involved. So generally speaking, with migrations, unless I'm doing one-to-one, I just have one system, I'm probably not doing it. In the past, you used Easy Transfer for one-to-one. You use user state migration for larger migration processes. But USMT was a little bit more common in enterprise deployment scenarios.